running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans. Welcome to Talking Novels. How's everybody doing out there on this Monday, July 22nd, 2024 for episode number 98? For those that can tell, Restream changed some stuff up on us. We are trying to figure out what this new system is, how it works, what we're doing here, because we don't know what we're doing usually ever. But we are there. If you saw us pop in on the bottom corner of the screen, I was like, the hell are we doing down there? I had to fix that. But hi, how's everybody doing out there? I'm Alex Cuesta, partner in crime over there, Dave Hyatt. What's going on, brother?
I got to say, I am very impressed with how seriously these athletes are taking these 2 weeks from
Yes.
trials to the Olympics. The amount of great performances, whether it was Diamond League or ATL, which had a huge weekend, some great studs. Quincy Wilson, that's all I got to say. 44.20.
Quincy Wilson, Noah Lyles, 981. I mean, like
Keely Hodgkinson,
they're not
154.
This is different than any other Olympic tune-up I've seen. I will say that, and maybe we'll talk more about that with our guests. But I just want to get going into it so we can get them in here. If you are watching on YouTube, if you are watching on Facebook, X still isn't streaming us for today. We have to get officially verified there. And we're under that process right now. We started the verification process. So we will be getting the blue check mark. But once we get that blue check mark, we'll be back. But we'll share it on there afterwards. But overall, if you're watching where you're watching, how's it going? Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you all. If you like what you hear today, give us a subscription on YouTube. Go follow us on Facebook. Spread this word of mouth to anyone that enjoys track, likes running, and all that good stuff. Before we get into all the fun stuff, as always, Adam Nalvin doing his third annual River Rock and Run 5K. We will be saying this until November 16th occurs. Go on and register. It's a Saturday. You can run either 2 people, do a mile and a half, hand the baton off, which is pretty cool in a 5K, or you can run the 5K on your own. All of the proceeds will go to Monmouth and Ocean County Food Bank, 100% of them. And at the end, you'll be getting some beer. You'll be getting some food, best post food. And we all know runners run for beer. That is what we do. So last week's show, we had a great time. We had another high school stud, Alexandria North. She is New York State 400-meter champion coming from the small private school, Lord's High School, right over here in Poughkeepsie. And she is going to Penn State. And I think we discovered she might be more of an 800-meter runner, but we'll let Rizzo decide over there. But overall, we had a fantastic show.
Someone smarter than us will make that determination.
I mean, you were smart enough to suggest a show, so I feel like your IQ is higher than mine, and like I'm like a peg down underneath.
Is that saying much though?
I mean, listen. Low bars are still bars, okay? They are still bars.
I put myself pretty low, so.
Damn it. So anyway, I want to bring our guest right in because he is someone that we're pumped to have on because he was gracious enough to have him on his show for some reason. He found us interesting enough, so we'll see how low his bar actually is set. He is Lyle Smith. He is the host of the Story Forge podcast, a writer, storyteller, and marketing professional. What's going on, Lyle?
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we absolutely appreciate you jumping on. We had an absolute blast on your show, the Story Forge podcast. It is right now in audio only form, but I'm slowly convincing you to get a video going. But this is kind of the trial run. You're going to see how Restream works, and maybe you'll jump into this area. But overall, we had a blast.
Yeah,
it just felt like 3 old friends just chit-chatting about track, sharing our stories, and it was just a really good time.
Yeah, I had a ball. I mean, it's I've never done live before, so if I sound a little nervous, that's why. I asked you guys to come on because it was my theme is all about making things matters is what I say. So it's and I thought I've been listening to you guys for a while now, and I just love what you do, and I love the stories you get into, and sort of the mission you're on in terms of getting the sport some much needed visibility out there, and some thoughtful conversation about things, I think, and it's and I thought that was really great, and I thought it was a perfect fit for my show, so I was very happy you guys accepted the invitation, and I think we had a really good conversation, so it was I enjoyed it.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I had a blast, and it was just, like I said, it was just reminiscing, and obviously we like talking track, and what was cool is to have someone take interest in what we're trying to do, and it's like we could tell that you also have a passion for the sport just by talking. You're like, if we just chit chatted with you and you were like, yeah, I ran track and that was nothing, like nothing else, like
Mhm.
I wouldn't have asked you to jump on the show, right? Because we're trying to talk to people that had like a little bit of a career, but still passionate about the sport. And
Mhm.
while you are like your personality right now is I'm kind of an outsider, you absolutely have a passion for the sport, and it showed just through our conversation. And it's one thing when people come on the show and there's like, I don't know what I have to offer. And then they start chatting and they realize they still know so much more than they realize. They're still
Absolutely.
so much more in contact with the sport, because even being in contact in the peripheral with track and field is still very much enough, right? Because there aren't enough people even
Right.
looking at it from a peripheral sense. So, we like, again, we appreciate you jumping on, and I want to jump into the show unless you have
Yes.
an ad real quick.
Sure. Well, I was just going to say it's interesting to me because it's I'm not in the sport professionally. I'm not a coach. I'm not a running shoe executive. I'm not any of this stuff. But I, I'm a parent. My son has just started cross country. He's an incoming freshman in high school. Going to run cross country this year. He ran last year. I have a long background in the sport from a young
Right.
age and all that. And I've always been sort of amazed that despite the fact that it is running across the board, and track and field in particular is one of the biggest participant sports for young people in the country. It doesn't get the coverage. It doesn't get, certainly at the pro level, it doesn't it's still kind of a baby sport in
And we'll
terms
certainly
of
dive
business.
we'll dive into that in a little
Yeah.
bit, and because our gripes have been very much aired, and and then something funny popped up that I saw. Dave, you'll get a kick out of this. So FlowTrack is apparently hiring a senior content creator, and I am seriously giving it consideration about applying, because I just want them to like watch this show and be like, "What the fuck should we hire this guy? He rips us all the time." But it's like it's a good, like, honestly, like, I will say anyone out there, like, if I apply, it is what it is. I don't know if I'm going to. It might just be fun. But if someone does watch, I am not ripping FlowTrack out of anger. I
Right.
love what FlowTrack has done for the sport. The little bit of a bump that we've had, the reason why something like a Sidious Mag probably got the idea to exist with Chris Chavez is because of the things that FlowTrack did to
Yes.
pave the way while I was in high school and could watch meets and I always bring it back. The NAU workouts on FlowTrack
Yep.
were legendary. And the FlowTrack kick of the week was a must watch every week. For me, I
The
watch
kick of the week and
every single week.
the workout Wednesday. Yeah.
Yep.
Workout Wednesday, they were legendary. And that's kind of
Let's
like
give credit though to like Diestat too, who was kind of like the
Die Stack, Runner
originator of all this
Space.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but FlowTrack took it to the next level, right?
Oh,
FlowTrack
absolutely.
really got
Because they
down to
incorporated live meets.
incorporated live meets, and it seriously got down to the athletes. You felt like you were watching not just pros, a lot of college kids,
High
and they
school meets.
covered the big high school meets, and not in a way of numbers, not in a way of X's and O's, but they gave you video footage. They interviewed them. They were up. You could go to BU and see them up in the corner giving commentary at the meet. Like, it was something different where it felt more real. And so I give FlowTrack a ton of credit for that. I give them shit all the time, but I give them a bunch of credit for their pioneering spot.
I don't think, to your credit, Alex, I don't think you really rip them so much as
No.
challenge them.
Yeah,
You
you're
you
more
really
like
challenge them.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. I mean, if you can, say, do a critique that makes them do things better, I think that's all fair.
and it's all coming from a place of passion. Like
Yeah.
you want the sport to be bigger, and at the price point that it's at, you have a problem. You have an issue seeing how that's going to evolve into getting more people to actually watch it. So I don't think it's that you rip them. It's more you have concerns. Now, are you always the most politically correct way of speaking it? No, which is
no way.
fine.
No.
It's absolutely fine.
That's not
But so it might come across more as a negative gesture rather than just, hey, FlowTrack, here's ways that we can make it better. Listen to us.
On that note, if you have $30 to give every month, go subscribe to Flow Sports and watch FlowTrack, where they have great coverage of all the biggest meets. Anyway,
There's also 32 sports on there.
There's my free promo for you, Flow Sports. Okay, but so I want to jump in because this show is all about you, Lyle. We want to start off where we start off with all of our guests, because you were a runner. You were a fairly good runner in a time where you were in a war with you were one of the big schools at the time, a small school doing big results. I want to first ask, when did you get the spark to become a runner? Because it is an uncommon thing to want to torture yourself for hours on end.
It's I've heard you ask this question many times, and I've been thinking about how I would answer it. And I'm not even really sure. In the typical way, I tried all the sports growing up as a kid. I did flag football. It was terrible. I did Little League baseball. I did not like getting hit with pitches, and that ended my baseball career early. And I started running. We had in Bernardsville, New Jersey, we had it's where I grew up. We had the Bernardsville Recreation Commission had a thing called the Run for Fun program.
Which I want to stop you real quick, because that's funny too, because Run for Fun, when I was in high school, middle school, that was kind of used as the slur for being a runner. Oh, you're gonna go run for fun. Like, it was kind of used to make fun of us. And but then like we fired back with the shirts that were popular when I was in high school.
Right.
Our sport is your punishment, right? So I was kind of like the barbs back, but it's like funny that they had the Run for Fun program when after a while Run for Fun became like, aha, loser, go run for fun. Like, what I do.
I have a funny, well, I don't know if I'll tell it or not. Maybe later. It's about somebody else, so I don't know. But it's yeah. So they had this Run for Fun program, and it was Ed Mather was the head coach at Berners High School, who was legendary coach in New Jersey anyway. And I remember going, it was a flyer in this supermarket or something, and my dad saw it and said, "Well, why don't we go out and try this?" And so we went down to the auditorium of the high school one evening, and Ed Mather was up there on stage describing what this thing was going to be and what the sport was all about. And it was, he was part track coach, teacher, and ringmaster, really. I mean, he was it was like a circus to hear him talk as a 9-year-old kid.
Yes.
And so I was like, yeah, this is exciting. And he talked about, go up to the sneaker barn in Chester, and that's where you can get your sneakers, and you'll get a discount. And
there's always a local.
That makes your parents happy.
Every area has that local store that always gives like the 10% discount.
That's it. And as a 9-year-old, you think, wow, 10%, that's awesome.
We had miles ahead here. It was.
And I'll say this: if you're a shoe store owner, and I'm sure Craig over at his new spot at the Outpost, we wish you plenty of luck, Craig Siegel. The real running stores, what do? They let you go and take a run, and they had a loop, and they said, hey, go here, turn here, turn here, turn here. It's about a quarter mile, whatever it was. Go give a little run in your shoes. The non-shoe stores won't let you out the store without buying them.
Foot Locker's not letting you run around the mall.
The real running stores will tell you, hey, this is your loop. Go take a cruise, take as long as you want, go as fast or as slow as you want.
And they'll ask you your foot type, and you have an high arch, and they'll look at your foot, and they'll
underpronate you over.
They'll help you find the right shoe, and it's really it's invaluable, especially as a newbie, as a new person to it.
Yes.
And I remember, just on that, I'm gonna jump ahead for just a moment, and I remember when I got my very first pair of Nike Zooms. We had to go into New York City to get them because they didn't have them everywhere. We had to drive to the Super Runner shop in up on oh god, it was like 75th Street and something, I forget. East side. And they had a little loop in the store of the track compound.
That's really cool.
You could put on your spikes and run around in their track without damaging spikes, And that was really cool. But anyway, so Mather's doing this dog and pony show for all the kids and their parents, and convincing us to come out. And I honestly don't remember how many days a week it was. Was it 1 day a week or 3 days a week or whatever? But they had it out on the track at Berners High, and some of the high school kids were coaches. Some of the other teachers were volunteer. I presume they were volunteer coaches at the time, and they had us try everything. We ran laps. We did shuttle relay races back and forth. We jumped in the high jump pits. We jumped in the long jump pit and got sand in our shoes. We they had shot put there to try throwing the shot put around. And so all these kids, and there were dozens and dozens of us out the first night, and all running around, acting like idiots, like little kids do, and had an absolute ball. And so, what are you doing at the next practice? I'm coming. Sure, I'm going to be there. And every time I just wanted to go. And then they had a series of races that we would race against some of the other recreation commissions. I don't know if the schools had, maybe some of them had teams at the time, but I was maybe 9, 10, and so maybe it was 8 years old and up to get involved in this thing, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of kids who have run a little bit. They like playing around on the mats and chasing each other around the striped track, and as they get older and as they get towards high school especially, they're like, okay, I'll go out for track, I'll go out for cross country. That's kind of cool. And I knew those guys, and I knew that coach, and that coach was really kind of fun to be around. And so that later on, I realized that was sort of the feeder program for the Bernards track and cross country program. Between there, this is all sort of during the running boom of the late 70s. And so every town, every place, had a race on a weekend or 2 races on different times of the year. And you'd go sign up at a folding table and give them your $5 or $10 and go race the 10K. But every town also had a running club of some kind. There was Shore AC. There was, in the Tackanassie series in the summer, there was,
been there many times.
Fleet Feet. There was a Fleet Feet. I remember there was and they all had names like that. And Hundred and Harriers was a big one.
Yep.
And they were big, and they had all, they were sizable groups. And then we had a group that started, the first junior Olympic team that I remember was the year before I got involved, but they went out to the Junior Olympics in Kansas City, and it was still part of the Bernards recreation team at the time. And then the next year they had the Junior Olympic Nationals in New Jersey at Petty School.
Petty.
There you go.
On the golf course there. And that was the first one I ran, because they didn't have to, New Jersey, because New Jersey was hosting, we didn't have to do the regional qualifier, I think. It was just a state qual. It was you only had to do one qualifier, not 2, to get into it.
Yeah. And
so we had started, and by we, I mean, not me, I had nothing to do with it. They started a club called the Mine Mountain Road Department, that Mark Wetmore was involved in.
Okay. Yep.
And so somewhere in that first year of running, I got involved in doing some of these meets and some of the recreation meets. And then I got introduced to Mark, and got pulled into the Mine Mountain Road Department, because that's where everybody was training at the time, and met so many amazing athletes, runners, people, just great people. And so that first year was, I was all excited. I got my big bright yellow Mine Mountain Road Department stamp and got to run at the Petty School, on a very cold, blustery December cross country day. But then you love it. At that point, you just love it. You can't wait to do it again. You can't wait to get out and run with your friends and hang out. And that was my spark, I guess. Somewhere it wasn't like one spark; it was like a series of things.
Right.
I mean, that's
wonderful.
And the fact that I love the fact that I feel like we need more youth programs that do this again, right?
I was just gonna say,
no doubt.
The fact that we had something like that in the late 70s, early 80s, and then when I was young, in the late 80s, early 90s, that was non-existent.
And nothing in the 90s, 2000s.
I ran in the Junior Olympics, but like I had to go and find, like there was nothing that was like I couldn't just go to my local rec department and sign up. Like towns who have like wrestling and everything else, they need to have a rec track too. And I don't care if it was just get kids together and it's just playing tag or having fun, just something to get these kids moving and to get them interested in running as a potential sport.
And what I found cool about what you guys did, Lyle, is the fact that everyone tried everything, right? It got you to
Yes.
come back, that you weren't just pigeonholed into it's a running club, so we're going to run distance, or
Yep.
we're going to do sprints. It was
No, it was way too early for that.
and it
Yeah,
was the
I was.
possibility of I can go play in the sand pit again.
Right.
Like as a
Or-
9-year-old, 8-year-old, I can go jump in that sand pit again. I just got
Mhm.
that could be like my reward for running well. Like, and
Mhm.
there was that's the fun part about it. I can go throw that big heavy ball
Or
again. Like,
and I
that's
feel like it invited kids of all body types, kids of
Everyone.
all you know, it's like, oh, like maybe, hey, well, this kid who's heavier and when he's younger, and you know, kids are maybe saying things to him. Well, he can go win the shot put every time if you want. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Absolutely. It
it's a
was
sport
so.
that can encompass so many different types
It's
of
inviting.
people.
It's a very inviting sport.
And one of the things that was kind of that I remember is because we had some of the teachers, yeah, but really some of the high school kids, the varsity kids who are, you know, when you're 10, they're 17, 16, 18.
Yeah, they look like grown adults.
And they're like, you know, it's like meeting the Yankees, you know,
It
it's
is.
like,
Yeah.
oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah.
they're so cool. I want to be just like them. And you know, you get to know a few of their names and you see some of them. And you know, and they had gone on to they had already run these races you're just starting to hear about. You know, they're just starting to, you know, the what is this Junior Olympic thing? I don't know. What it has Olympic in the name. That's got to be fun.
Yeah,
And
I ran too there.
and then you go to a couple of, you know, high school meets to watch, and you're like, oh wow, they're wearing spikes on their shoes. That's so
Yep.
wow. I can't wait to do that. And so it just generates this excitement. And I mean, I remember you have one of your previous guests was on a few years ahead of me. Meg Waldron was.
Oh yeah.
I remember meeting her as part of this whole program.
Yeah.
And all these, you know, who ended up being state champions and
Right.
Golden West champs and all this other stuff. And
Golden
it's
West.
just really, really cool to meet these people and see. And at the time, Bernards had just won their 100th cross country dual meet in a row.
Yeah.
And they were in the New York
That's
Times. You know, it was a big deal. And so that just got a whole lot of buzz and made everybody kind of like, oh wow, what's going on over there? What's cross country? What's that? And I had no idea. And then you learn how cross country's. I had to explain to my son how cross country is scored.
Right. Love it.
It's like kind of like golf, but
Us and golf. Yep.
It's complicated. Well, when you start saying,
what you get is your score. You get first
what
place.
you get is
one
your score, and that's the easy part. And then you say, well, but wait, there are 7 guys on the
Wait,
team.
their seventh
and
guy
5 guys
beat their
score?
fifth
How does that
guy.
work?
He bumps
Right.
him back, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
if you get top 3, you win.
Yeah,
That is kind of the easiest way. If you get
Yeah.
top 3, you win. You'll win that meet. You'll win every meet if you get top 3, basically.
So Lyle, you just kind of touched on it, and for anybody listening who's younger than we are, you might not know what a dominant program that Bernards was.
Oh my God.
New Jersey in that era. I mean, it was absolutely like the top cross country in the state track. They were unbelievable. Like picture kind of like CBA now, but kind of that like they won everything. So what was it like being a part of that program, having Coach Wetmore, wonderful coach, obviously we all know what he's done at Colorado. And, you know, what was it like if you can, I'm not sure if you were on that team or what you remember from that Penn Relays 1980-83, the Bernards Asbury Park tie that actually went to Asbury Park, which is weird because they didn't have like timing like we have now. So that one had to take a while to decipher.
It's a lot to unpack there, Dave.
I'm sorry.
So how did I come in? No, I'm with it. It's interesting.
About the prowess of the Bernards program in that era.
Yeah, well, we'll start with the Mine Mountain Road Department because that was my introduction to it. And what it was really funny. Our singlets were yellow. It's a big Mine Mountain Road Department across the front with the logo of these they look like flames, but they're like runners sort of.
Do you still have that?
I do.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I do. I'll send you a picture, and you can post it.
That's great.
I have it here. Actually, it's really funny. This is a long. Here,
Look at that.
That's me at the Bernards Invitational. God knows what year, but that's a Mine Mountain Road Department singlet on it.
That's
now on the back.
And no, everyone, that was not a pre-color era photo. It was done for effect.
It was done for effect. We took a lot of because we used to develop our own photos back in those days.
I question that. I question that. Anything 10 years older than me, I question if they had color.
Get out of here.
But on the back of it was funny, and I think this was a Wetmore concept too. I apologize if somebody else invented the design, but on the back of the singlet was an orange triangle, like for slow moving vehicles.
Okay.
That's great.
And so that was our thing, and we went, and nobody could get the name right in the newspaper, and it was a riot. It was really funny. But so we would train as sort of junior Olympians, and or hopeful junior Olympians, and so we met, and in the summertime, all the high school guys would come and train. We'd all meet at the high school and run at a place called the Wall, which is this one corner of the parking lot of the high school where everybody would meet late in the afternoon in the summer. And and when the Mine Mountain Road Department started, it got a lot of the parents involved. So masters runners were involved. So we had everybody from, junior, 10, 11, 12 years old on up through high school. Some of the college guys would come back and train all summer.
So it was a whole town.
It
thing.
was sort of a whole town, at least this real serious running batch of town people anyway. And so there was always a group of 20, 30 people there in the afternoon to go train. And so we get to meet these guys. And as I got older, got into high school, 8th grade, 9th grade, I was training with all these guys. I was training with, Paul Stogren and Chris Blanchet and John Carlotti and Jim Nielsen, and the girls' side, Meg was there all the time. And the girls' team was really, really good too. And so we were there training, and we became, and I was, I'm the youngest of the bunch at that time, and so you're trying to be friends with these older kids, and they're.
That had to be cool to kind of get that rite of passage a little, right? Like, I'm finally good enough that
I'm part of this great program.
They're cool with me running with them. I'm not slowing them down on long runs anymore. Like, I don't have to be like, they're okay. Like, I can go and keep up with these people after I've seen them for so many years. I'm finally there. Like,
well, I remember seeing the photo in the Times of the 100th, dual meet win and all that stuff. And it's like, they're like famous, it's like, this is a big deal. And so when you can, in a program, when you can kind of link those generations. And so we had guys, Buck Logan came back and trained in the summertime. Pete Carroll came back and trained in the summertime. And these are all guys that went on to, Buck held the 2-mile state record for years, and he went on to run at Harvard, and Pete ran at Villanova.
But that's how you build programs, by people coming back and, just word of mouth and tradition. Like, especially then, because everybody had their local school, local town newspaper then that everyone read. It wasn't like now where everyone's looking at all different things. Like, everyone read the same newspaper every day, and everyone went to the store. Like, maybe my picture's going to be in it on the sports section, so you would go and you would buy like 15 copies. It was different era. It was fun.
And that was back in the fun time too. And even I had that starting, right? Because I had the internet coming in when I was there with MySpace and all, like Ed Scullions being on there all the time and things like that. But even then, like, you didn't know a lot of the teams except for maybe the top guy or two. Like, everyone knew the top individual because you would see at the major meets, you would get the results in the paper of the major meets too. And they would point out any of the local kids that ran well at this big invite or that big invite.
Sure.
So you would know, like, coming into town, this school's coming in. Okay, we got to watch out for this kid and this kid. Like, you would see them all the time. It was like the fun part there.
I think it was harder as a coach then to prepare, because you didn't, like, now you can just print out, you can go on anything. All right, this team, here's their top 20 runners with all times. You only had paper, maybe like the top 25 runners from the whole race, or in a dual meet top 10. So you didn't know maybe what teams 3rd, 4th, and 5th guys were. So like,
it's hard. And what's more is, like, we had, like, the season was kind of broken up, right? So in track, you had sort of the relay season, and you had sort of the dual meet invitational season.
Dual meets were kind of mixed in, and then you had
the championship season. So it was kind of broken up in 3 parts. Cross country was there was the invitational part in the beginning.
Then it was all your counties and
then sort of the counties, and then you get into the state meet series of meets.
And you'd have your flush off meets kind of thrown in at the beginning with the relays too, because that was always I feel like always the relays and frost off were the chances to get your individuals that maybe weren't going to be competing late in the season enough
Right.
races to like keep them happy, keep them PR,
Yes.
right? Because you would make your relays nice and deep. They, of course, the relay meets would love to take your money, so they're happy when you're putting everyone in.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
get these frost off meets where even if you have these talented freshmen, sophomores, you want them to go compete against their own, right? And maybe make them happy when they go and they win a meet and things like that. And
Yeah.
I think I was able to compete. I think I was allowed to compete in maybe 3. And then my coach was like, "Yeah, you're done going to
My
those."
coach let me compete in every freshman meet as a freshman, and I was Ocean County freshman MVP, and it's a memory that I'll ever have.
It was awesome. Yeah.
He could have brought me to some varsity race where I would have run, gotten 20th place or 10th
Yeah.
place, but I now have this memory because he chose to let me run against kids my own age, and it was awesome.
And that's
I
a great thing to have.
difference
That's
is
a
in
great
depth,
thing to have.
too.
I mean, I had a little bit different. I had my freshman year in high school. I was, let's see, we went down to an invitational meet in Virginia. We went down to UVA to run a big invitational meet there. And one of our guys, Paul Strogan, had been hurt. He was in a ankle to hip cast for 8 weeks and recovering from that and all this stuff. And that was back in the winter, spring. So his summer training was all off. And that
was back in the 80s. Wasn't like it was
back
now.
in the 80s. Yeah. Yeah. He had fallen on the ice on a training run and lost, I don't know, lateral collateral ligament is what I remember.
At least coach couldn't get mad because he got hurt on a run. So coach couldn't get mad.
We're all of us know, and any coaches watching, close your eyes. Was this a training run or a training run? Like all distance runners know what that means.
Okay? He was out running. It was on the ice on my mountain road, I think.
So coach can't get pissed off,
No, it was a real.
Coach can't get pissed. It's like,
yeah, we played. We had plenty of
fun runs,
basketball pickup games that were training runs, and
we had golf courses that when it rained, we would just go slip and slide all down the.
Yeah. Well, you're a teenager. We all do stupid things.
We invented a sport named hand tennis.
I would love to just do that now again. That was fun.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hand tennis was great. Anyone watching from Manchester with me knows what that was.
So Lyle, you were there in '83.
I was there. Oh, you will skip ahead to 83 here. Yeah. So 83. So I came up and I ran varsity on the cross country team.
Oh, nice.
As a freshman.
Nice.
Up until the state meet part of the season when Paul came back and I had run early in the season. I was 5th man on this great, and I had this great run, and it was summer training and all this stuff.
What a great thing.
And then over the course of the year, I had kind of gone back and I was 7th man. And then Paul came back and I was 8th man. So I was the 8th man on the championship cross country team.
But you got the varsity letter, right?
I got the varsity letter.
There you go.
And here's the thing, though. You were a part of that championship team, right? Because there's a momentum side of cross country.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not racing well going into championship season as a team. It hurts, even if you are getting this top guy back. And the whole entire theory would be, okay, when we get him back, we'll be okay. But having
he was a 5th guy,
and having a 5th guy and a stud freshman looking, and these older guys are going, all right, we might be all right when we leave. Like, let's get this one because he might be getting the next one.
He helped save the season because I'm sure the other guy goes down. Like, oh, here's this freshman coming in. Here's this freshman.
Yeah, I've heard you guys talk about this a lot, and in relay season especially, when you have to have in a relay, you have to have four guys, 4 girls show up on race day ready to run.
Yep.
And sharp, healthy, all that stuff. Cross country is the same way. You got to have all set. You got to have 6 or 7 anyway. You got to have them all ready to go.
Yeah, because you might have that tiebreaker. Honestly, you want all 7 there. Because when it comes
down
to
want all 7, and it's hard.
Or you could be Coach Tefelsky at Westfield and have your angry guy of the 4x8 running a 156 because they didn't run up to their standard. But I digress. Coach Tefelsky at a public school having 8 guys that can run 156.
Hey man, that's great.
I digress.
So I finished that cross country season running Junior Olympics. So I went out and ran. Where was it? I don't know. It was at Cincinnati or something.
So what was the attitude of the high school coach? Because right now it's like, here's the thing. I never ran Junior Olympics. I ran 6th grade, moved to Lakehurst. We didn't have running there. So that was never a possibility for me. No one ever opened me up to that, right? I didn't know that existed, honestly, until like high school. And some kids were like, I ran at Junior Olympics. I'm like, I was faster than you. Why wasn't I there? But overall, it's like, I didn't know about that. So what was it like? Because now there really is like a combative nature, and it probably was then too, between your private coaches and your high school coaches, because it's like AAU basketball,
Not
right?
so much middle school, more so once you get to the high school level.
Once you get, so what was it like there when you're sitting there finishing your season, and now here you are going to a more private thing and not something for the school?
Well, and again, private. This is this thing. It was the Mine Mountain Road Department. It was that had grown out of the Bernards Recreation group of people, and so I honestly, I think the recreation department was happy not to have to fund it anymore.
So was Wetmore the coach for the high school and this club
Mark,
too?
at this point, Mark was the head. Mark was coaching the club team, Mine Mountain Road Department. And there was a time, now this is my memory, so I don't, I have holes in it. So he had come on, it was funny because Ed Mather was the head coach of the track and cross country team. There was another guy who was my geometry teacher, was Bob Jones, who went to Manhattan College. Yep. And nice. He was the head coach of the winter track team, which was treated differently in those days. And then Mark was the coach of Mine Mountain Road Department, and all these kids were coming in to run these things. And so the winter track team was different. It was a whole bunch of different kids at that point. The kids who ran cross country didn't run winter track in those days. Okay. That came later. And then so Mark came in, and he was a volunteer assistant for a while at Bernards.
So was there any?
And then eventually he got brought on as a official assistant coach.
So was there any like tough times between the club coach Mark and the high school coach?
Between Ed Mather and Mark Wetmore?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just because like that's usually
has to be put.
That's usually the case.
It's really
club and school.
All right. I have to explain. You have to bear with me for a second, because I have to explain something that's going to take a couple of minutes, just so you guys have an understanding of the logistics of all of this. Mark Wetmore graduated from Bernards High School in '71, I think.
Yeah.
And so he ran for Ed Mather at Bernards when Bernards was becoming a track powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Then Mark went to college, and his journey is his own. I won't discuss it, and because it took him a while to sort of come back into coaching in Bernardsville, and he had, through a mutual friend who was also a good friend of Mather's, a guy named Larry Sullivan, who was John Sullivan's father. John Sullivan ran on the '79 Penn Relays team for Bernards.
Wow. Okay.
So that's it. But Larry Sullivan he was a military pilot and a colonel in the Air Force, and ended up finishing his career in commercial aviation. But he was good friends with Ed Mather, and he became good friends with Mark Wetmore. I'm not sure how or when exactly that all happened. But he was like a grand old friend of the program. So he was around at training all the time. He trained with us. He would run our 20-mile runs on the weekend as a master. He went to some of the meets as a master's runner, and he was just sort of a great friend and inspiration to a lot of us growing up. And he had befriended Arthur Lydiard at some point in his life.
Oh, wow.
And he introduced Arthur to Mark.
And I think it's interesting to think of, like, when people hear now, especially in New Jersey and even Colorado, right? Mark Wetmore, we're thinking Mark Wetmore, right? Mm-hmm. But at this point, he was still wet behind the ears, not necessarily, not.
He was only 25 years old when
I met him.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was a kid, and he was still trying to figure out his way. Probably didn't know if he wanted to really be a coach at this point, was just doing something because he enjoyed it, did it in college, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, people need to keep in mind, this isn't the Mark Wetmore yet. This is just Mark Wetmore.
Everybody has a journe, right? Everybody has a journey to become whatever it is they're going to become.
And Mark, if you listen, come tell us your journey.
You might be reluctant to do that. I would love to hear it, honestly.
So I've heard from everyone. Yeah, try to get Mark. Enjoy that one. This is guys that ran for him in Colorado.
Yeah. He's and he's as good a friend and influence as I've ever had in my life. So I have nothing but amazing things to say about him. Yeah. But he came up, and so he met Arthur Lydiard at some point, and Lydiard came to Bernardsville, and there's this famous story of these guys going on a 30-mile run together.
Oh wow!
And yeah, it's crazy. It's really
why?
It's really
the question. I don't care about anything else. The real question is why.
It's legendary stuff, you know, and it's all true. I mean, it's not like there's, you know, nobody's telling stories just to be flamboyant about them. They're real stories. And so he got to know Arthur Lydiard a little bit, and then that was his method. So I came up as basically sort of a Lydiard type athlete.
Yeah.
And so we were all running a lot of base training in the summer and all that kind of stuff. So when Mark came in, so he was training us and all of his athletes, like there's ownership of this. We're going into the high school program.
Yeah.
And so there was natural conflict of like, you know, who's coaching whom, who's taking credit for what, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, Mark was never a credit kind of a guy anyway, really, as far as I've never known him to be such. Ed Mather liked the limelight a little bit, and so they had a little bit of a, you know, sort of natural conflict that they got over the years. And it's really funny because Ed Mather, I want to say it was 2005, passed away in 2005, and Larry Sullivan died the next week.
Wow!
Oh wow!
And so Mark came in for Mather's funeral.
Yeah.
And then ended up staying for Larry's funeral. And so, and everybody was
the reason why he wanted to stay, right? Over in
Jersey.
Not the reason why he wanted to be there.
No, not at all. But it was like, but there's this thing, and so when you ask, was there conflict? Yes, there was conflict. Was there a lot of love?
Any two great coaches?
There was a lot of love because there was a lot of history there too.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of frustration because personalities are what they are and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, we were all, I don't want to say we were all better for it, but we were all, you know, in the end, we were all kind of focused on the same thing. You know, we were all focused on the same goals. So in the end, people sort of got out of each other's ways and focused on that.
Any two great coaches at first are usually gonna butt heads because they both have the same desire, goals, and ambitions, you know. But the great ones will work it out and figure out a way to work both other strengths to get everything out of the athletes.
And when you get that athlete coming with coach and now coaching with coach as an equal, you kind of get that father-son dynamic a little bit where I was teaching you, kid, what do you like? And then it kind of like, and it's natural, right? Especially amongst men, you got to build that respect. No one's going to hand it to you. No one's going to sit there and Mark, you were a great runner, but I don't know how you can coach. Don't talk to my kids unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole
thing.
You
have to build that trust as, you know, that you're both going to do the right thing for each other as well. And I can imagine that's where the butting heads. And then as it all came out that Mark is here for the same reason I'm here.
Sure.
Let's make this work. And you get that. It's all like the
and in the end, you know, and in the end they had the best interest of the team and the best interest of the kids at heart, and that's where it has to be, because we're not here for us, we're here for them, and that's how it always was. And you know, personalities are funny, and it's and I have a million stories about all kinds of stuff like that you know I would tell to people privately, and they would probably, you know, hopefully not think I'm poking fun at anybody, because I'm not. I tell these stories out of love. You know, I have a great love for all this history that I've had in this program, and for the
wouldn't
people
that be a
who were there with me.
Wouldn't that be a podcast? You have people and call it stories we shouldn't tell. Where they just know things live on podcasts about things and people, or you just honestly, that could be something cool. You get a group of friends together and just want to sit around and shoot the shit as if they were in front of nobody, and then boom, you get, you know, you might get in a lot of trouble, but it might be a great podcast.
But they just better be funny. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Listen, it's funny to you guys, whether it's funny to other people, you guys are going to laugh other people on the outside.
So the legacy thing is funny because it's you talk about you know, how two great coaches, whatever, but it's a generational thing too, right? Yes. So you know, Ed Mather was there. Mark Wetmore came in. Mark coached you know, I never coached really, but my Brad Hudson ran
Yeah.
with me on our Junior Olympic Mine Mountain Road Department teams,
Woo.
and he went on to be a great coach.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, how many of the CU guys have gone on to be
Oh my
great
God.
coaches too? I mean, you look at
Yeah.
Culpepper, you look at Goucher, both Gouchers, you look at
Ritzenheim.
Ritzenheim now. It's
Ah.
like these are, you know, there's a thing, and it's not a straight line. Legacy is, you know, you think about a legacy as one yields to the next, but it's not. There's all these other kinds of influences. Like Mark, you know, came from Mather, sure, but also Lydiard, also other things. He ran for Gagliano at Rutgers for a short time, you know, so he knew all these guys and experienced all these things, and that's what makes you. It's the people who can take these experiences and turn them into something positive in a training way that become great coaches, I think. So that's where that is. So Dave, I'm going to get to the 83 thing. So 83, I'm a freshman, 83.
Right.
We're going to, and I had this I knew what my dad told me about the Penn Relays. I knew nothing about them really. And my dad had gone, and my dad ran hurdles for Perth Amboy High School.
Okay.
And ran at the Penn Relays when they used to run the shuttle hurdles on the infield because they didn't have enough lanes. So he would tell me about the Penn Relays. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's, you know, I can't wait to go. And I was excited. Maybe I'll make the team.
Real question. This is a legitimate question.
Sure.
Was your dad around when Bill Cosby was still competing for Temple and when he was like a star of the Penn Relays as a thrower? Because
he was kind of a star in the 90s.
He was a star when we were there. And the thing
handing
is,
out the batons for
think of Bill Cosby now as all the stuff he got in trouble for. They don't know that Bill Cosby was an all-American athlete at Temple.
Bill Cosby was a great track athlete
and a football player as well.
I don't know. My dad was excited. You know, my dad always got excited. He got starstruck a little bit. So
I don't know.
He'd love to see the stars come out.
I remember Bill Cosby handing me the baton.
It was so great, you know. It was
so,
and that's the thing. And I don't bring up Bill Cosby to be controversial, but I do not want to like downplay you. I think
track was big.
You can separate sometimes what the individual accomplished as opposed to what they have done, right? You know, OJ is a great football player. OJ killed somebody, but OJ is a great football allegedly. Well, allegedly. But that happened, and you know, and you could see that, but people can sit there and still be starstruck by everything he did in Buffalo.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of history there that you can't really ignore. I mean, it's you know, like Cosby, I call problematic, you know, because it's like there's
good way to put it.
It's problematic. His history is really problematic. However, there were things he did that were amazing. I mean, the Penn Relays was on the verge of failing financially, at least one year that I know of.
And he stepped
up. The story was he gave like 150 grand to the Penn Relays to put the meet on.
Yep.
And I don't know how exactly. I know the story is true. I don't know if the amount is true.
Right.
And a few years
obviously meant a lot to him because he became very
well. He was there every year.
He was passionate about the meet. Yeah.
He was in Philly. It was his hometown of his school where Temple was. So
another story you may not know. A few years later, George Steinbrenner did the same thing.
Yes, he did.
And he had no connection to Philly that I know of.
No.
But he just thought it would be a shame that something like that would go under. And so he, you know, and he's another sort of problematic character.
Which is hilarious because everyone thinks of George as like the shrewd businessman that didn't care. And then here he is being a big softy. Like, hey, this is a track meet. I'm a baseball guy. I'm this big business owner.
For a meet that's not, you know, for a sport that's
didn't affect him in any way.
You know, a minor sport, for lack of a better term, compared to
baseball,
football, and that.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, anyway, 83 was my first time going to Penn Relays. And so we were all excited, and the team was all made up. It was John Carlotti on the anchor leg, Chris Blanchet, I think, ran 800. Paul Strogan ran the 3/4, and I forget who ran the quarter. Sean Tutton, I think. And they went, and I you know, I always had this vague idea. I'm like, I'm a freshman. I'm coming up. I'm like, oh, I want to be on that team. I want to be on that team. And there's just no way, you know.
Right.
So they got out there and they ran, and everybody was all excited for the DM on Friday afternoon. And so the race goes off, and they were wearing. There was a bit of a controversy because they wanted to wear all white uniforms, which we weren't really allowed to do. So they had white shorts with their white Bernard singlets, and we loved it because it was exciting and fun, and our athletic director was having a conniption about it,
which is hilarious. What's controversial, right?
It's really funny. Yeah.
Back when all white was like, and there was a time over here at Marist, because I went to Marist.
Mhm.
Black wasn't our color, gray was our shade, and we would do like the darkest gray possible to get it close to black because we wanted cool shit to we wanted things to look cool. Now it's like fine, like they don't care, we can use black, but like those weird things that they are just like
right. Well, I think the biggest problem with it was that I don't think they told anybody. They just went out and ran it.
Well, you got to do it, especially
that's how my coach did it too. Yep.
And so they did it, and they ran, and we're cheering them on, and I think they had the whole thing was they had the 100 meters was going on the other side of the track at the time. So they had all their photo finish and electronic timing stuff over there, and they hadn't moved it over for the DM yet. So they come down, and on the anchor leg, Carlotti catches everybody, gets a few steps out, coming around the last turn. And they do that thing at Penn that it's like the volume goes up, and it's like this ooh as they dive at the tape, Yep. And so Carlotti's leading, and the sound's getting louder, and Vance Watson is clawing his way back around this last turn, little bit, an inch at a time, step by step. And they come down that really short last straightaway because those turns are
right in the middle,
wide
turns. Yep.
And before he knew it, Watson's coming up on his corner, and they dive at the tape together, and they call it a dead heat in time, but they give the win to Willingboro because more people saw Vance Watson cross the line first.
So it was
10 flat 0.3.
So if it happened now, there's a chance it could have been a completely different outcome. If they had
I don't know.
Technology now, right? I mean, it's all could have.
Nobody ever really gave it that much of a fight. So
which is good.
I think there was enough. I think there was enough to say, yeah, no, this is right. But but it's 10 flat 0.3. Nobody had been under 10 minutes yet.
Yeah, that's a absolute hell of a time.
It's
a hell of a time now.
That would have won Penn this year.
Yeah. 10 flat 0.3. That is incredible.
Yeah, well, we won it twice in 10:06.
Who needs super shoes?
Well, that's a whole nother thing.
I know.
But anyway, so 83 Penn, that was my first Penn
stories.
That was my very first Penn Relays experience. In addition to that was also I think it was the first big year Arkansas had. So they took Villanova down a few notches that year, and it was depressing.
I can always tell when I'm talking to someone like old school as opposed to new school, and it reminds me of my old coach, because when you're talking about Penn, you're like, yeah, and on the 3/4 leg, on the quarter, on the half, on the mile. Now it's like, who's running the 4? Who's running the 8? Who's running the 12? Who's running the 16? Well, that reminds me of how my old coach taught in high school. Like, who's running 440? You got the 880,
Well, I don't, it's not a
quarter.
Who won the 1,609.3 meters?
My coach just said, who won mile?
Yeah, the mile.
Who won the half?
I never understood that, by the way. I always thought just start at 9.5 meters back.
Yeah. I understood why.
It as a mile.
I guess because it was 4 even laps. I guess they wanted because you could break it down into even quarters. I don't know.
I will say this: it's the one thing that the Americans have on everyone else, because everything else is metric, but for some reason the mile is gold. Like, I don't know why. It's such a metric sport. Everything else is metric. The 15 is a major race.
Well, no,
for whatever reason, the mile, which is an American measurement, became the end all be all. Because if you really think about it, everyone loves 100 and 200, whatever. But man, the mile is huge, because when Roger Bannister first broke 4, that was as big, if not bigger, than anything else that's ever been done.
They thought humans would self-combust if they broke.
It's still, conceptually a big deal. I mean, that's a thing.
Then you have Hikam El Garout, who just doesn't care about your conceptions and hates everything, and just was a legitimate champion too. That guy doesn't get half as much credit as he deserves.
I think you're right.
Quickly, I want to touch on something real quick, and I'll get both of your opinions, Dave. We didn't talk about this earlier really off the beaten path here. But ESPN did one of the dumbest top 100
Oh.
lists I've ever seen in my life.
The top
They
100
called
athletes
the top 100 athletes of the 21st century.
since
We're not
2000, right?
even a quarter through the 21st century, yet they felt the need to do this list.
I thought it was since 2000, right?
Since 2000, but no,
Yes.
of the 21st century, though.
I got
They
you.
labeled it of the 21st. We're not even a quarter through, okay?
Right.
So it's a stupid list to begin
It's
with.
at the whole list. Is
Now,
actually
the list only includes 3 track and field individuals, all 3 sprinters.
Yep.
No Ryan Kovacs, no
Well,
Egon, no Mondo, none of the people currently that are the best to ever do it. Jakob Ingebrigtsen could be on that list just for his time trial accomplishments. But you look at Faith Kipyegon, we are so excited.
I have one name for you. This is the world's best athlete, right? Ashton Eaton.
Ashton
is
Eaton.
Not
Oh,
on
yeah.
that list. I mean,
Not
what are
on
you
the
doing?
list.
Yeah.
But it's like we look at it and it's like, you know, even this year, we're all excited about the Team USA. We have one of the
Yeah.
deepest Team USA teams. Our ladies in the 1500 don't have a chance because Faith Kipyegon exists. Since when
Sarah Hull ran the girl from Australia ran 350.
the girl from Australia ran 350, and then you also look in many years like where's Mo Farah? Mo Farah was for 6 years was the most dominant 5 and 10K runner. It's like
that's for real. That's no joke, right?
Well,
there.
he
was
was
an
a tactician.
embarrassing
He was a tactician. But anyway,
it was an embarrassing list. Sorry, I just wanted to get your
that's
opinions
okay.
on it.
No, I
hate it.
that list was so. I mean, like
egregious.
But that gets to another point. I'll get to set aside the other sports, the ball sports. In track alone, in coverage, it's like they show the sprints, they show the start of the 5,000, and they show the last lap of the 5,000. You know, that's the coverage.
lately,
that
been
makes me crazy.
They've been showing the last mile. It's gotten
It's
They've
better
been,
than
showing,
this,
like, they've been
too,
getting
but
to the mile and
it's
realizing
still-
the race starts at that last mile at least.
and they
Yeah.
have been showing a little small box when they do go to commercial at times. But that's something that like we've been saying for a while.
It's still
Yeah.
that's a new thing. I mean, when I was,
yeah.
you know,
With all this
and
technology, let's
So I
Let's
quickly
do
want to jump in with this comment. Slow feet Donny. I love that name, by the way. And saying there was no Jakob, no Kipchoge, no Krauser, no Mondo, no Faith. So funny who writes these things. I'll tell you, Slow feet, you know who writes these things? Individuals that focus on like the 5 or 6 major sports of America and only peripheral, right? Because another embarrassing, Jordan Burroughs was the only wrestler. You're telling me that there were no other amazing wrestlers since 2000? Like, so again, it's, you know, Katie Ledecky and I
It's
think Michael
visibility,
Phelps,
too.
or
I mean,
maybe
that's the
Ryan
big
Lochte might have broken in, like with swimming and stuff. It's like they only focused on the major sports. So it's kind of one of those things where
now here's the question:
shame on us though for not being better at promoting our sports, right?
Did they at least take the like NBA athletes out? They didn't put them in, right?
LeBron James, I think, was number 3.
How can they? All right. Anyway, okay.
Like here's the thing: they focused on football. They did tennis. Serena was up there. I think Serena was number 2, which credit to Serena.
I was thinking it was
argue
only
that.
Olympic athletes.
No. They were all like it was
All athletes.
in general, all athletes, football, everything.
Yeah.
But it was
Asinine.
dominated by, you know, the 5, 6 major sports and like that they focus on ESPN. So joke of a list. So I want to quickly touch on some of the other topics. You know, maybe we'll get to one of them. I don't think we're going to get to both of our topics we want to touch on. We're going to ask you our final question. We have to do that. But coming from someone, you know, you were competing in like this in 80s, 70s, right? When you started running 70s, 80s, you've obviously seen changes to the sport. You've continued to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel the sport has come in terms of changes to their technology and different improvements that you've seen so far?
I think I have how do I answer this? I have a hard time personally with the super shoe thing. Is really hard for me to get my head around, get my heart around. I understand it, I get it, you know, and because I go back and I think, okay, the first Olympics on a synthetic track was Mexico City in '68.
68,
Yeah. Yep.
It was at altitude, and there were a ton of world records set at the sprints and the jumps. Now, I'm kind of okay with that because everybody was running on the same track. Everybody was running on the same surface. Everybody was running at the same altitude. I'm kind of okay with that. Now you start adding these sort of other things in, and to me, like when you start talking about super shoes, you have sort of a mechanical device inside your shoe that makes you better than you are without it. Right.
So I have a quick question real quick with that. And I know where you're going with it.
Yeah.
But so other events besides running, we focus on super shoes because we're all runners, right? That's a big thing. But what is it to say we had Capers Williamson on the show? Capers Williamson, the #2 javelin thrower in the country, finished second at trials.
I have an
He
answer.
talked about he talked about different javelins and the comfort level of different javelins. We've had some pole vaulters talk about the different pole vaults and things like that, and they're always improving, right?
Yeah, no, and I have no problem with that either. But here's why. According, at least unless the rules have changed, and I'm not as in depth with the rule changes the way some people are. When you go to a major competition, anybody, when you have a thing that's a device to throw, or anybody can use anybody's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
it doesn't happen, but I think
no, of course it doesn't happen. But it seems to me that if everybody has access to the same stuff, it kind of eliminates the problem that way.
So your issue is with the access of the
super shoes is the big thing. So I think access at the beginning was a hard part because Nike
earlier on,
nobody else did, and then they started coming on. Now everybody has some version of a super shoe. Okay, fine, that's great. But now my problem with it is less whether they should be allowed or not, or any of that stuff. That's for bigger minds than mine. It's like the same thing happened in tennis with big-headed rackets. The same thing happened in golf, and they're actually dialing it back in golf now.
Well, the belly putters aren't allowed anymore.
Belly putters aren't allowed, but they're dialing the ball back.
Or in swimming, the bodysuits.
Swimming the bodysuits, and they got rid of those eventually. Yep. So what it does is it really throws sort of the record books into a state of chaos for a while. Yes. Same idea as the steroid era in baseball. Right, it changes things and
which I'm all for steroids in baseball. Let's get that. Okay, anyone wants to destroy their body entertaining me, go for it.
Oh man, I know. I have friends.
We could differ there,
but it's what gets an asterisk, what doesn't. And I've talked to I have someone who studies it more than I do, who said, I said, so what do you think of the super shoe stuff? And he said, well, it's kind of a moot point because whatever you say is not going to change anything, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But he said, I said, how much do you think it accounts for? And he said, well, based on everything I can see and have looked at, and he had looked at it pretty deeply, it's about 5 seconds ish for 1,500 meters. Okay.
See, I think that's just in the race, but the big benefits are the fact that you can recover so much faster. So you can
I can get to that too. And I don't have the science behind it either, but
I don't either.
I'll ask. So in racing now, all of a sudden, so now 4 minutes for a mile doesn't mean the same thing it did before super shoes. It just doesn't, it's still fast. It's still great. And I have all kinds of, respect for anybody who runs that fast, but the super shoes make a difference. There's no question about it.
Sure. Yep.
Now in recovery and training and all this other stuff, because I have a son who's going to 9th grade and really just getting into the sport, and I worry about, because I don't know how much training in super shoes, what it does to your body in terms of what training.
Yeah, I don't either.
Not in super shoes.
So we did have Jeff Benjamin on, and this is at was now over a year ago, and that was at the real start. Like super shoes becoming ubiquitous, and he was on the front end. He's a prolific writer for Staten Island and that whole area and things like that. And he knows everybody. Freaking Jeff knows everybody. But he's talked about the super shoes because he's still an active runner in the community. He coaches and does things like that. And he warned and said these should not be worn at all times because he
said workouts, but training wise, you
kind of push your body over the limit. I equated
this is exactly my question. Yeah,
I was never a fan of Icy Hot or Ben Gay or anything like that. I know people used to lather it on their muscles and everything. I was always of the sense of when my muscle was tearing, I wanted to know so I could stop letting that happen. Right? Like I didn't want to go to a point where afterwards my leg is 3 times the size and I couldn't feel it. So, and I feel like the super shoes are almost having that effect where you're not feeling what you're doing to your body if you're training in them all the time.
This is exactly my concern. And, it's like, okay, you're going to race in them. That's fine. Maybe you train
Hard workouts.
X percentage of whatever, and I don't know. And so you get two
we
pairs of spikes different.
used to put our spikes on for hard workouts.
Yeah.
And stuff
You
like
almost
that.
feel too good that like in these shoes that your body doesn't realize how sore that it actually is.
But
From what
Right.
I've heard,
the question is,
from what I've heard, I don't know. I've never
we've
worn
talked
it.
on this show a good amount about how everything's different, right?
Yeah.
We are now monitoring ourselves much better. We're eating much better. We're sleeping much better as athletes, especially runners. So
way.
they are, I could see coaches that are very much in tune with this, and even athletes that are very much in tune with this, understanding what this stuff does, right? Kids are going to overdo it sometimes. Don't get me wrong. And that was kids and regular trainers that were sitting there in high school running 110 miles a week. And it's like, idiot. Then their back gets hurt. That's normal, right? But I feel like these kids are much smarter than we ever were, where they're looking at it going, okay, I'm not feeling X, Y, and Z. How is this affecting me? And they're going on the internet, they're researching, they're listening to shows like ours and other shows and things like that to find out about it and try and figure these things out. Because I think that we're in this generation where we're getting the results we're getting, and we're quite literally seeing people hang on longer too. We're seeing athletes having longer times. They're being good for a long period of time. It's not just your top greats that get these 10-year runs. You're getting a group of people 5, 6, 7, 8 years run together.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
I agree with Lyle that these shoes certainly play a role, but I also think just as big of a role is what Alex mentioned, the fact that there really is no such thing as a bad coach anymore in terms of what they give you in terms of the actual workout. I'm talking about no. Listen, let me finish. There are bad coaches in how they communicate the information and how they come at a kid on a personal level, which is
the ones that don't,
which is just as important. But in terms of any coach can get access to any program and any workout online now. That didn't happen when we were young.
I think that's
some kids got stuck with just really bad coaches. Then now you can even coach yourself. Just the interaction that these kids have with each other, I think helps because they all know what the other kids are doing. And
the communication
technology and communication. Coaches talking to each other. When I was my coach hated everybody else. Now
we had a coaches roundtable of friends.
Yeah, like no, but I really didn't help because like I've seen different coaches say, hey, like, you remember that great kid that you had 3 years ago? Well, I got a kid now who's similar. What did you do with that kid to help him get ready? Because I've never had anybody who's on this level. So there's a lot more interaction between coaches, even if they're on different programs, which never happened when I was in school.
That's what I see. And it seems to me teams were much more competitive on that level. They hit,
I would say combative.
There was some secret, so,
yes, but they're too damn nice.
But
kids are too damn nice to each other.
But I don't think that's for lack of competitiveness.
You say that, Alex. It's funny.
No, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because here's the thing: there was a time where you would not get away from the kid, so he wouldn't spike you. You would keep going. He shouldn't be in your lane. If he falls, who gives a shit, right?
I don't think it's lack of competitiveness.
But now you're friends with that kid. You go on training ones with that kid.
It's different.
So you're going to slow yourself down when you're trying to start your kick, so that kid can get a good spot.
We've had on different coaches who say, like, we just want to, like, there's certain teams that people just want to kick their ass. And that's still there today. And these kids go at it. I'm telling you, I've seen some of these kids. It's different. They are way more friendly than I was in school with other teams.
Yeah.
But when they toe that line, they want to win. And it shows in how fast that they're running.
This is a good thing, too, because again, go back to my freshman year in high school. I'm running with, sophomore year in high school. We had one pen. Jim Nielsen was our anchor man, and we went to the state meet, and we're running the 1600 meters, Jim and I. And Jim is a senior. I'm a sophomore. He ended up going to run 4:07 at Golden West. Jesus. So I'm just hanging on, I'm just riding, and we're running in the group meet. Just basically running multiple events, get points, win the group meet, and try and win the group meet and move on to the next week.
Yep.
And so the all groups was foremost in our heads, both of us. And so we go, and we're out there, and with about 300 meters to go, I'm right on his tail, and with about 112 meters, I took off and jumped him, and I beat him for the group title.
Wow.
By like half a step.
Well, that's awesome.
Well,
I had no business beating this guy. He was like, but not that day. But racing, I beat him that day, and that was really cool. And the point I'm getting to is that we were friends, we were teammates, we loved each other like teammates do, and when the gun went off, none of that mattered. I just wanted to beat him. I wanted to beat his brains out like he did.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that you brought up that story, because I feel like we haven't mentioned enough that you're not just a runner from New Jersey. Like, you are a great legendary runner from New Jersey who has state titles. You're not just some guy who was on the Bernard's team. You are a dynamic and huge part of that legacy. So if that came across in any other way, I apologize.
So quickly,
no, not at all.
Quick, what were your PRs when you finished high school?
When I finished high school, let's see. I ran, well, officially it was 4:10 on Fifth Avenue.
Safe.
I ran multiple, like 4:11, 4:12 legs on relays.
And this is back when, now you can listen to it and it's like, oh, 4:10. Okay. But this is back when people didn't run that.
Last class of 1986.
People didn't run that in high school.
But just think about it. That's incredibly fast. But can you imagine, like, you're running 4:10, right? Or 4:11, and your coach is like, man, this is the slowest anchor leg that we've had on this CMR.
That's kind of how it was.
What the hell's going on here?
I was probably pretty irritating to Mark, because I
had a 406 guy, 407 guy.
We've talked about this too, because my brain was wired more towards winning the race than running fast.
Of course.
So let's touch on that. So how much faster do you think you could have run if you were just focused on clicking off times? You think you could have dipped under 4:10 in high school?
Oh yeah.
Instead of competing and winning
races. I have a story, because I ran 4:10. My official time was 4:10.5 on Fifth Avenue, right? And Fifth Avenue maybe shouldn't be counted anyway, because it's
doesn't
matter.
I
finished second.
It's a mile long, and you used your legs and your arms to complete it. So therefore, it is
a little downhill. But I finished second to John Troutman, right?
Okay.
And
yeah. There's no shame to finish second to John Troutman. Jesus Christ.
And
Eric Holt's coach.
They were hand timing at the time.
Yeah.
And John finished. He won his second title in a row on Fifth Avenue. He ran 4:05 or 4:06. I forget what the time was. 4:05, I think, 4:05 and change. And we got across the line, and then I came right behind him, and I watched the guy who was timing me. He's all amazed at John Troutman. Then he looks at me. I'm 3 steps over the finish line, and he goes, "Oh, click."
Like, that's my sub 4:10, buddy. That's my
what
sub
about
4:10.
I ran a 4:08. Like,
well, I don't know. In my head, I ran 4:08. But
that seems like that is the you give yourself an extra second.
Now,
the 1 second to look, the 1 second to click.
It's an annoying story of mine, and I never got
throw on
to go faster than that.
Throw on current track surfaces and super shoes. You're a sub 4 miler.
Maybe. Maybe. That's a real possibility. But it's what was interesting. I was interested.
It's interesting though to think about and to like ponder, like, what would I have done? It'll drive you nuts. But
when I think
you let it,
I think 5 seconds seems steep. I really do. And that individual probably studies more than I do. I think it seems steep.
I don't. Not just shoes, but based on just the track surfaces are so much faster.
Yeah, but I think, and also it's like, these guys, are they that much more talented than the other people that
I would not be shocked if it's 10 seconds on a banked indoor track.
Maybe.
Ooh, I don't know.
Compared to the 80s? Compared to the 80s, Alex, you ran at Red Bank. You don't think you're running super shoes 10 seconds faster than
Red Bank doesn't count. Red Bank was a gym floor.
There was a lot of tracks that were like that.
That's true.
The Dunn Center.
Indoor needs to have asterisks left and right, because indoor has been so different in so many ways, where people didn't go to Madison Square Garden to run fast. They ran to one on the Wood, and it was just awesome to run Milrose. You didn't go there. If you were a 4:10 guy, you were running 4:17, and it was awesome. And you were running fast, right?
And you loved every second of it.
And it's not only just a shitty wooden track, it was a shitty design track. Everything about it sucked. It was just great to be there.
It was 11 laps to the mile. It was
It was about being at the Garden.
100%.
And even like
that was an entirely different. As a fan, that was an experience.
And my high school teammate ran there. It was the coolest thing that I ever saw in person.
People love the New York Armory. I hated the Armory, but the Armory is like great for what it is. I think it's too hard of a surface. I hate that place. But you know what? It's like, but there's the developments there. Now we have so many beautiful indoor track facilities, 2 in Boston, Ocean Breeze in Staten Island. The Armory still holds up. Like, So it's great what we have going on, but we kind of got off the beaten path. But it's like, I don't know. I think, if you add everything in, maybe 5 seconds, but then you give those guys back in the day. Hikmet Garuch is under freaking 340 with our current technology, our current eating habits, our current everything.
No, I mean, again, like I think every athlete is different. I think the studs might not run that much faster, but you'd have a lot of people running faster. You'd have
that I think is a true thing. I think it's less of a difference
at the
higher levels.
Yes.
Like,
I think
but you'll have way more kids.
Jakob Ingebrigtsen is still going to be Jakob Ingebrigtsen.
Correct. But look at how many kids, look at how many people break 4 now. And like we had one meet in Boston. I always say it, 75 people. That's not happening then. But
I think it's this. I think it's kind of the same impact that big tennis rackets had, and big golf clubs had. It makes the sport a little bit
bigger
easier,
or the bigger pads in like hockey.
Yeah.
But track and field is going through what a lot of other sports are going through, right? It's all offense, no defense. And that's where I would kind of look at time as your offense, right? Want to see great times. You want to see sub 4s. You want to see sub 150s, 145s. Like that's what brings people in, as opposed to defense is racing. But the thing is, though, great football games in the tundra, defensive struggles, one big touchdown wins it all. A purist loves that, right?
Yeah, but
your casual doesn't give a shit.
Depends on the event, because obviously you're never going to have that in 800 down. That's always going to be a fast.
But you know what though? But the thing is, your purist will enjoy the defensive, the Matt Centrowitz 1500-meter title, right?
The Mo Farah that you mentioned, he never ran great time, but he always won.
Your casual, your casuals to look at it and go, wait a minute, he just won the Olympics and he was 10 seconds off the world record. How is that? How is that a good thing? And there is that what you see.
Eamon Coughlin earned his nickname,
the chairman of the
boards, on racing. He didn't win it on times.
Yep.
And
he
ran
remembered as one of the all-time
miles. He's amazing. But you know what? I couldn't wait for the last lap and a half at Milrose every year to see what Eamon Coughlin was going to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then years later, Marcus O'Sullivan was going to do.
Yep.
Because they were going to do something spectacular.
God, they should bring the boards back just because. They really should.
So how do you feel with where track is in terms of that aspect? Like, do you think that there is too much of a focus on times?
Lyle, real quick before you get to that, I want to get the 2 comments we got really quick, because I want to give, Sophie Donit's watching. I want to get their comments. What is it going to take for these stories to get told? This is back when we were talking about Jakob and Kerr and everyone, like the track and stuff. Only thing that is bringing love to the 1500 mile is the beef right now, but it's lame because Kerr doesn't race. And here's my answer to that, Sophie: more beef. Stop being so damn nice in track and field. More beef. I don't want Kovacs and
it works with the sprinters.
I don't want Kovacs and Krauser being nice to each other. I want them looking like 2 ogres that want to kill each other. I don't like too much niceness.
Here, let me jump on this. As far as anybody in the newspaper was concerned, Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett hated each other.
Yep, and that's all
they wanted to knife each other in the parking lot.
And it sold a lot of tickets.
It sold a lot of papers,
a lot of fans,
a lot of tickets, sold a lot of everything. It was awesome.
So
and it was not true.
Not even remotely.
Right. But they went with it because it helped.
That's the story. But they need, that's the British tabloids.
So I'm jumping to our next comment real quick. Every halfway decent high schooler gets paced races now, which is why so many other high schoolers get it now. A couple years ago, Sawinski, a former guest of our show, paced Festival of Miles. Like, how lucky is that? I mean, that's
awesome. there is much more of an emphasis now, even in high school. Like, they have so many of these. Let's get the best guys together to race each other meets. But whereas, I mean, we had Milrose games and
this is also the connectivity aspect, though.
But
right?
now they just have miles and like
easy to find.
They're all friends with each other.
I remember when I was a senior in high school, because we were all trying to get times to get invitations to places. Get an invite to Golden West, get an invite to IPI in Chicago, get an invite to Milrose. Had the Milrose trials in those days.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'd go around and we'd hear about, Paul Vandergriff is going to be running the 1500 at the Philadelphia coaches meet. Let's go there. And so we went down to run this meet late in the season before the state meets, specifically to run, because we heard it was going to be a fast race and Paul Vandergriff was going to be there. So it was guaranteed to be a fast race for some reason, people thought. And so we went there. We got there, and I was it. There was nobody else, no other top 10 runner in the region there.
Oh, no.
And
Right.
so I'm like, okay, I got to try and run this fast race on my own, which is just
The
Right, like, 'cause
mindset
the thing
that
about-
has to get
It's a
into that is
horrible thing.
really
Now-
hard.
I
That's
mean,
a hard mindset.
Now we have like kids from New Jersey going out to California in April for these invitationals that they get invited to. So like everything's lined up prior to,
Right.
and you know who's going to these meets. So
But
it's
also
great for
on
that.
top of that, you also had friends at every meet now, right? So say you
Yeah.
got in that situation right now where you knew you were trying to run a fast time, and say you get
Yeah.
in there and everyone else is in there.
Hey,
You're probably
hop
friends
in.
with a few of the kids right there behind you.
Hop in. Yeah.
And you might even say, hey, listen, really trying to qualify. I'm trying to run sub 4:15, sub 4:10. Can you take me through a half of the race? And that
Yeah.
kid's going to look at his coach and they're going to go, sure. I was just trying to,
That
I'm on
didn't
the
happen
outside
in
looking
those-
in. You didn't
No.
know each other. The thing is, you didn't know each other. You didn't know what
Well,
each other was running.
Even
Yeah.
if you
know
knew
this kid's
them,
a
you could
420
just
guy. This kid's a
Yeah.
420 guy, and he absolutely can bring me through in 2:10, no problem. And it wouldn't hurt his race that bad. Like you have,
And that was the
never had-
thing back then too. Is the whole pace setter thing was at least
Only
at
for the
at
big
one
ones.
point it was questionable in the rules.
yeah.
Like I remember Tom Byers was the rabbit for a world record attempt in Oslo, I think it was, and he went out. Nobody went with him. He went out all by himself. He's hitting the splits. They're falling back.
It is a very bizarre thing, though. If you think about
He
any
won
other
the
sport,
race.
no other sport has that.
He stayed in and he won the race.
Why not? If you were leading by that much, you might
Screw
as
you
well.
guys, you're not going to follow me. I'm taking
Right.
it.
But like now you have pros rabbiting for high school only meets.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's very
crazy.
different. So I don't know. Is it
Greatest
better?
racket of
Is it
all time.
worse? I don't know.
I think it's
There's
good
an awful lot
exposure.
of good runners out there. Awful lot of good
Yeah.
athletes out there, in all different
I
events.
mean,
Here's
Let's
one
just
thing,
wait.
though.
track is in a better place than
Yes.
it's been. I feel.
Yeah,
in a
no
in a
question.
while. And
Interest
I
in the
think
sport.
this next couple weeks is just going to be so influential in this
Yeah.
sport building, and
I'm very excited for
and the
that.
fans. And I really think that they're going to do a very good job. Now, the time thing is tough because things are you'll be able to see the results if you're waiting to watch it on prime time, but you can always go over to Peacock if you have it to watch it live. It's always hard when it's in a different part of
It
the
is.
world
It
because
is difficult.
they want to show everything in prime time. That's when everyone watches. But a lot of people, like, you go on X for 1 second, you already know every event.
You got it. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You
And
still want to
quickly-
watch the race, though.
And quickly, Dave, because
course.
we went back a year ago and they let out, like, I think it was the world standards and things like that,
Yeah.
the Olympic standards, and we saw how hard they were, right?
Yeah.
Now everything we've talked about over the year, the super shoes and everything, they were onto something. They knew what was on the horizon. Imagine if the standards were the standards from
I just
last
wish they
Olympics.
were a little less in the javelin and the hammer throw. So some of our past
Agreed, but
guests
imagine if they were
would have gone. But
Imagine
No,
if
yeah.
they were from the last Olympics. This Olympics would be so inflated right now. It wouldn't even be, it would be difficult to even choose teams.
I did question those when we first got the list, when they first came out saying this is ridiculous, because based on them,
Yeah.
last year not one American would have made it to the 800 meters for the men
Yes,
because we didn't have the same. But now, I mean,
they were onto something. They knew.
I didn't know.
something was in it.
Listen, maybe these athletes were like, you guys thought we were running fast last year. No, this is the Olympic year. Watch what we can all do. Like, we've been running fast, but wait, this is like, and it's coming. You guys now running 141 every. Like, I think
That's crazy fast.
I think six
So
of the
crazy.
top, like 4 of the top 6 times in the 8 have run it, have been won the last 2 weeks.
And here's one of the things I don't care about super shoes or not. 141 is 141. Like,
It's
you
fast.
still have to be
There's no-
moving.
there's no
You know,
arguing.
There's no arguing. Like Quincy Wilson dropping a 44.2.
Listen,
Are you kidding me, kid?
I got an e-bike.
kidding
I don't
me?
think I could ride my e-bike as fast as David Radisha ran the 800.
Oh man,
Quincy Wilson's an interesting
Yes.
story this year, though. I mean, I'm so excited to watch that kid run.
Curious
But
where it goes.
I get worried about him too, because it's like
Alex
he's
talked about it too.
16 and it's got a
That's what
long
Alex
way to
says.
go, and so I hope he's got good people around him. It seems like he does.
He seems
Seems like a good
very he seems like he has a very good head on his shoulders. Like
Yeah.
watching him after a post-race interview and then watching Obi Moore back in the 90s, completely different. Like Quincy Wilson seems to have people around him who are like making sure that he's not, over racing. Like he's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm glad. The only thing I don't get is why was he able to go getting 6th, but they didn't bring Christian Miller in the 4x1 who was 5th. 2 high school kids. Christian Miller finished 5th.
I
100.
don't think Christian got the Olympic qualifier.
No,
Well, maybe.
he
Did
did.
he?
He was
Maybe.
994. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious why
Well,
one high school kid got
But
made it.
But that's one of the things I worry about, because that was
Yeah.
the talk for the Bernards guys for a long time. It's like, oh, they do great in high school, but they burn out and blah blah blah. It's Wetmore's fault because he runs them too much and all this other stuff. And
Well,
I
listen,
got
I mean,
none of that is it could be further from the truth as far as I'm concerned. It's if you look at how many successful high school kids succeed to the next level, to the next level, to the next level.
it's not many.
It's a small percentage.
It's a shell shock of high school training. I don't care how hard a lot of your high school training is. College training is another level, where because you're now running against 8 grown men as opposed to boys, and it's just different in terms of the strength that they have, the way they can finish runs, the way they can do workouts. It's a major difference. And as an 18-year-old boy becoming a man very quickly, it changes.
Although I would ask Lyle that. Coming from Bernard's and the kids that you ran with in high school,
right?
When you got to college,
right?
Was it just kind of the same old, or was there a definite jump? Because you came with guys like, I mean, running sub 410, then having all those guys.
I have, well, again, given my experience in college too, because it was, I got hurt early on, and it's the only injury I ever had. I didn't get injured until I got to college, and then. It's a time thing again too. Times have changed, kind of a thing again, because in those days there were still a lot of coaches who were of the run everybody into the ground and whoever's healthy on race day runs.
Yeah.
Right. And that was sort of the method, and they were still doing a lot of the same training techniques they did in the early 70s, maybe late 60s, and we were running repeats on a field in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, that had square corners and all this other stuff. And I basically had a stress fracture in my left foot that got misdiagnosed for the better part of a year. And, in the end, it was 20 years later, I was running the Chase Corporate Challenge in New York, and that bone broke right through.
Ooh, ow.
So I was the goner from that point. So was it harder? Yeah, it was harder. It was different. I'm happy to say, from what I can see, a lot of the distance coaches now are more. They're a completely different animal than they were.
Not even close.
And so they're much more like.
A lot more like rest.
I was very. We were all very lucky at Bernards to have both Mather and Wetmore, because they were very thoughtful about the way we trained. Yeah, we trained a lot of miles. Yeah, we ran a lot of miles in the summertime, in the wintertime, well, all the time. And but it was
summer, winter.
But it was but he was all of our workouts were sort of customized to the individual, and we paid attention when we had aches and pains, and so it was a whole different kind of a world. Then I went to college, and it was like everybody runs the same workouts, and everybody does this, and everybody does that, and
one size fits all.
And
survival of the fittest.
I was, when I was there, I don't want to be overly critical. You can read that in the book one day.
Okay.
But it's so it was not, not everybody responds to that type of training. How about that?
Definitely not.
And so, and you were asking me, Dave, about PRs earlier, and I just want to, because I have a card I wrote down some of this with a note that I wanted to try and get in if I could.
Yeah, go for it.
Was because I ran 410, I ran 154, I ran 918 as part of a triple.
Yeah.
I never ran the 2 mile by itself. I never ran 3,200 by itself. I always ran it as part of a triple. Or
Jesus, 918 on a triple. Okay. Wow.
And
all those miles paid off. All those long miles.
Say again?
Paid off. I said all those long miles.
That's it.
You've been split a 918 because you're exhausted. Like
50 flat for 400. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I ran.
I mean, great high school times. Even now, those are great high school times.
Incredible.
Yeah. It was good. But it was a team we had, and everybody, and we went to the Colonial Relays in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Yep.
And we broke apart our distance medley team. So we had an A and a B team, but it wasn't the best team versus the second team. It was half and half. And we went 1-2.
Oh, jeez, that's always fun.
And so we had 7 guys under 2 minutes for 800 meters, and we had,
Sounds like CBA or Westfield.
Or Westfield right now. Yeah, it's such a good problem to have.
Except we had 150 kids in my graduating class. It was like this tiny school.
I know, it's crazy.
So,
What you guys did was just, I mean, that run was just absolutely. So did you see this in Wetmore, that he would move on to something greater than Bernard's at that time?
I always hoped he would. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was too good to just be with us. He needed to be somewhere bigger. Well, I'll tell you what, because one of the things, this is my card I wrote, because he was big into doing things that have never been done before. And he probably would not tell you about this, but I will tell you about this. So like we won after the 83 Penn, where they ran 10 flat, 0.3 and lost to Willingboro. 84, I came, we had a team, Jim Nielsen was the anchor. I was the leadoff man. And we won Penn relays, distance medley in 84 with Ranjan Sinha was on the 800 leg and Steve.
Back-to-back years.
That's awesome.
Then in 85, we had an issue. That's a long story. 86, we had a team that could have competed, but not all 4 of us were ready on the day, and that's that story. And then 86, we came back and won. I ran the anchor leg, and we ran 10:06 both times. And we had a team that won in 79 as well. So that was awesome. But then you look at some of the stuff I'm jotting down here. We had 82 all groups cross country. Carlotti won the championship as an individual, and the boys and girls won both team championships. Never done before. I don't know if it's been done since, honestly, but I knew it had never been done before at the time.
I'm sure it has.
It doesn't matter what school you're at, what you're doing. That is really difficult to do.
Then Carlotti went on and ran 4:07 something or 4:08 at Golden West.
Jesus.
Nielsen, Carlotti ran 150 flat too. He was an animal. That guy. He was so good. Jim Nielsen the next year, 84, won the 1600 and the 3200 at the all groups outdoors at South Plainfield. Meg Waldron ran 2:08 for her anchor leg at Penn, which
Meg was such a monster, and she's such a nice woman, and so
wonderful,
nice and bubbly. Now you would never think that she was an absolute monster.
And the work she does for these athletes and these
unbelievable.
She's amazing.
Kids is phenomenal.
She's so great.
Fantastic. We love.
She ran 2:08, and that was the fastest high school girls leg for a long time.
Yeah.
Paul Stogren in 83, I think it was 83 by that time. It was the 82, 83 cross country team. He was the one who was hurt, who had the cast on his leg for 8 weeks. He made the world junior cross country team. And I think it was I don't know if he was the only high schooler from America to make the team ever, but he was. That's crazy. There's not many.
Yeah.
And all from a small school in New Jersey.
Yeah. And then my little tidbit on that was 85 and 86. I won the 1600 meters indoors and out at the all groups. Woo. So there's a lot of things that team did over the years that from a little teeny town,
deserving of credit. Like the legendary status is deserved. It's not something that it's not a myth. It's not a story. It's legitimate accomplishments that And the thing is like, it's great being someone like me who, Dave was kind of at like the end of that. So he was hearing those stories, right? Dave knew. Yeah. I didn't know really. Like my peripheral was Dave's time and a little bit before Dave. Like that's where I was getting my stuff.
My old coach went to Roselle Catholic, so he knew all those people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of great stories, and New Jersey has a massive, awesome track.
One of the best track states in the country.
And like, for example, I posted, there's a page on Facebook called Old New Jersey Runners, of which I am one.
I joined.
And I posted a picture I found in an old box somewhere, which was this picture.
Yep. It's a great
Dwayne Brake from Columbia beating John Carlotti in the 1982 Bernard's Invitational 800 meters. They both ran 151. And
you got to get these things signed.
I posted it. And my dad took all kinds of pictures when I was growing up. It was great. So I posted it, and then before I knew it, Dwayne Brake had commented on it and
Oh,
told me
wow.
the story. And
That's so cool.
so we connected, and I'm like, I didn't really know him growing up, but
Right.
I met him. We ran, we crossed paths a little bit, and he told me the story that a week or two after, maybe a state meet, my dad had made up a series of photos from that race on a board, and he gave one to John and he gave one to Dwayne at the
You got to
meet.
post this episode in that group. I feel like they'd get a kick out of a lot of
And
stuff.
I'm like, that's so cool. I had no idea. It's 100% what my dad would do. But it was just a nice story to have. So even now, and this is, so you talk about all this stuff, you talk about the long history of New Jersey, long history of Barnards, all this stuff, all these great accomplishments and races and things. If you asked any of those people what their favorite memory, most valued memory they have of any of it, it's going to be some workout they did in the dead of winter or
Oh yeah,
in
everyone
the heat
has
of
those.
summer.
Everyone.
It's not going to be the race. It's
No.
going to be some run they had with one of their teammates.
And if it is a race, it's a relay usually. If it's a race, it's a relay memory of where
Right.
we didn't think we had it and we pulled it out. And probably that 10 flat is going to stick in everyone's head, right?
Exactly. And
So-
it's that, and I think that's one of the things that separates our sport from others
Yes.
is that it's so personal.
And I even think you can get back to a point like if we asked Usain Bolt what some of his favorite memories were, it would probably be beating America in some of those 4x1s where
Sure.
it was 4 of the best Americans ever, so the best American 100-meter runner, like 4x1 runners, and me, Johan, Asafa, and young kids, like sticking it to them and looking at and running past Tyson Gay. Like that's probably where Usain Bolt's brain will be. Now he's obviously a showman. He loves talking about, but if you could really sit down and talk to Usain Bolt, it would probably be those relays that were the special moments to him.
Yeah, I mean, and the fast races are great, and I remember a lot. I forgot a lot too, like everybody else. But it's the personal things. I told you guys when we were chatting on my show, I went to the Pac-12 meet here in Boulder in May, and Buck Logan was in to see the meet. John Sullivan was in. He was to cheer on his daughter. I missed him. He had left before I got there. But I ended up finding Buck, who I hadn't seen in years. And we sat. I introduced him to my son. We sat and we sat there for 3 hours watching track meet, talking to each other.
That's crazy.
Like it was yesterday.
Yep.
And I don't know, I don't know that you get that in other sports. I have no evidence to say one way or the other, but I know we get that in our sport. And I think that's really one of the things that makes it special.
Yeah.
So we've went pretty long and I'm happy with that because I think that, like I said, like I certainly I don't know how these groups feel about sharing your own personal stuff, but Lyle, this is going to be your episode that you were on. So Dave, don't share it. Don't get kicked out. But Lyle could share this. So on that old new, I feel like just not even for our own game, but I feel like the old NJ runners would get a kick out of hearing some of the great stories from your perspective. If any of you
and Meg and
in the future, if any like the gentlemen or ladies that are on there that want to come on the show, more than welcome to jump on the show and reminisce and talk. Now, I want to end off the show the way we ended off with everyone, or at least try to, as long as I don't forget. So, Lyle, you're going to get the magic question. One of the main goals of this show is to make the sport better. And I think someone from ATL was watching us because they put everything on YouTube TV for free. So thank you, ATL, for being smart. But we want to try and make the sport better. We want to make it better for the athletes that are pros so they can get paid. So we don't have to have a series of episodes like we had with the athletes that are begging for money because they shouldn't be.
Right.
And we also want to make it so our casual fans can come in and watch it and enjoy it and know what's going on and things like that, like all the other major sports. So if you had a magic wand and you could just flick your wrist, boom, it happens. What would you do to make our sport better and make it more profitable for our pros and casual fans to enjoy?
Well, it's interesting. There's two things we talked about. The youth program, I think, is enormously important, and it's gotten dropped over the years.
Yep.
Some places they do it really well, and of course, money's always an issue with all this stuff. So, magic wand, I'm going to wave money away. The other thing is, when I was a kid, we used to go to the Melrose games at the Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
And they had a series of these indoor meets that were in Madison Square Garden. There was one in Chicago,
Sunkist, right?
in
At
LA.
Meadowlands, right? No,
There
that was
there was
in LA.
Meadowlands was the
Meadowlands,
Vitalis. Yeah.
That's it. Yep.
And it was awesome. And we'd all go to the meets and we'd all cheer on everybody. And there was racing. There wasn't world records all the time because there were crummy tracks and whatever. But I think, and I wrote about this on my blog, so if anybody wants to go see it, there's some ideas there. But I think the idea of maybe creating, and they're kind of working on that now. So this, which is, I think is a great idea, sort of a league of multiple teams. I think nationally, you know, it's like in the old days of baseball where you were a Brooklyn Dodgers fan and you hated the Yankees across the river, you know? And that's the kind of
thing. You still have old Dodger fans that were like Brooklyn, kept them with LA and still hate the Yankees. That is still a thing that you have. Like,
it's a real thing.
That generation is certainly dying out, right?
Yeah.
But there is, you know, my grandfather and that generation that loved the Brooklyn Dodgers, hate the Yankees. When they went to LA, they kept being Dodgers fans and still hate the Yankees.
Same with Giants fans too. New York Giants for the
absolutely 100%. I would love to have that kind of passion for a team or a group. I mean, because I grew up, again, my Mountain Road department, that was our club. And we had our fans who would come out and root for our races and cheer us on and all that kind of stuff. I would love to have that kind of a, because they need to do more for the fans.
Every sport has like teams that you root for.
Right.
Every major sport, you know. Right. And even high school track, college track, it's such a huge team component. And then you go pro and it's
Villanova, Arkansas, all through the 80s. At Penn Relays was massive.
Yep.
And then you throw in Georgetown from time to time, who slapped everybody around.
Stanford,
it's a thing. You know, you have this loyalty to your club, and Premier League soccer is the same way. It's like you're a supporter of Newcastle United, and that's all you're ever going to be.
And here's the thing. You get maybe 3 athletes per event, right? And you can maybe even figure out like, okay, sprints, you get X number of athletes, whatever. And that's your teams.
Yep.
You're telling me they can't field 45, 60 athletes per team, 70 athletes per team. Football teams have 50-something rosters plus practice squads. They could do it. They could certainly do it.
I'll throw another little wrench.
You don't got to pay them much either. They would stay.
I'll throw another little wrench into the works too. I think they should run different distances.
Certain times.
Milrose back in the old days, you'd have a 500 yards.
Yeah.
You'd have 1,000 yards.
I thought it was cool when Ingebrigtsen last year broke the world record in the 2,000 meters.
They hardly ever run it. I mean, John Walker held the world record for that for 20 years.
Which is why indoor is cool, because indoor you get the 300, 600, 1,000.
Yard distance
2K as well?
500, you know.
Was it Jessica Hull that just broke the 2K? Was it that?
Right. The girls, the
girls 2K.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because those races aren't run as much. But like you said, Lyle, if you can get these leagues doing different races, now you might see those records broken more often.
Who wouldn't want to watch your 800 guy against your 600 guy in a 1200?
Or just an 800 and a
400
600.
You know, imagine like David Radisha against Usain Bolt.
Give me Michael Norman against Bryce Hoppel right now on a
600.
Oh,
they asked this. This was funny because I remember running the 1200 leg for the distance medal.
It was such an awkward.
And we talk about it because it's such an odd distance. And then be like, okay, well, what's your strategy?
Do I run like the 8 or the mile?
Run the 8.
The strategy. Well, here's the strategy. The strategy is go out in a PR for 800 and hang
and then hold on. Yep.
That's it.
My coach said the same thing
gracefully. And that's the same thing with the 5. When you would run the 5 in college,
but you know
what's the goal? Hard 4 and die gracefully at last 100.
I like what Lyle said, about the all distances, because I don't know if you guys remember, Alex, you might have been young, but right after 96, when they had the Donovan Bailey versus Michael Johnson 150 meter, that was huge.
That's right.
It was on prime. I mean,
I remember that.
Johnson pulled up about 110 meters into it, but like that was the marketing was great. It was like a 25-minute. They had the intros and the race, and people watched. And it was like, man, people are watching track and field Saturday prime time. No, it was like 4:30 on a Saturday on like NBC. It was awesome.
Well, the hot take is The fastest man in the world is the 200-meter champion. The fastest starter in the world is a 100-meter champion. And that is the hot take that I will always give. 200-meter is the fastest man in the world.
Overall top speed, yeah.
Overall top speed. The
fair.
best starter is your 100-meter, but Noah Lyles is putting that to shame because he's a terrible starter. He's dominating everybody.
And he has to run
in that world stage. Oh, he's amazing. But Lyle, thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And thanks for being on my show. It was
fun. Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to watch and listen to you guys. I love your perspective. It's awesome.
We appreciate that.
When you reached out to us and I heard that someone of your stature from this state, and I'd say an old timer per se, was listening to our show and that you heard about it from Andy Martin, like that's a dream of like the fact that people of your generation and younger generations and our generation are all listening and that we can provide some sort of content to satisfy everyone's listening needs is amazing, and just to get these stories out from like people don't know that Bernard's was the most dominant track program in the state of New Jersey. And it's wonderful to hear these stories because this generation can like the world didn't start in 2000. Track was going on way before that. So it's just cool to hear all these perspectives and thank you.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that our sport is missing. I think more of this type of stuff because there's so much history, and there's such and the way you do it, the way you guys do it here it's so personal and so unique, and it's not like just statistics and agate type and of race results. It's like what happened when that happened. What did you feel when that happened?
And I can't even think
that really makes it connect,
And now I can't even think of like when we actually started this format. Cause I know we didn't do it for Mike Rods. We had to have Mike back on because we didn't do it there. We didn't do it for Kim or Jonathan Galt. Really, maybe it started with Jonathan Galt actually, and with Jonathan and Janae. Well, that's when we really started doing kind of the how did you start in the spark, and because and I'm happy we did it that way because we've gotten to hear some incredibly amazing stories and including yourself with great memories. And we have people after the show going, man, I forgot about all that.
There was a lot.
We'll get texts like, oh, but it's like, I think it was Scott Clayton who told us like anybody can go watch a race and talk about times and strategy, but what we want to do is what was your mind frame during that time? Like during your time in that life, what were you thinking? How did you feel? And we've had some vivid and wonderful stories that you almost can encapsulate yourself in them. And it's just a beautiful thing that I love that we get to do every week. And thank you so much for being
and it's all of our guests. So
it's absolutely my pleasure. I was, I'm glad to contribute something.
So once again, he's Lyle Smith. He is the host of the Story Forge podcast. You can find that anywhere you can find a podcast. You see the Facebook link that I throw down there. Go find them on Facebook, post all the episodes and stuff up there as well. You can go find him on Instagram at Nimblegram. It's spelled NYMBLEGRAM. And again, he posts up a whole bunch of his stuff there. He has a blog that he'll be posting up over there. All that fun stuff. You could find us at Talking in Ovals on anywhere you can find a podcast on YouTube. We'll be back on X hopefully next week when they finally give us the damn blue check mark. But we appreciate everyone that watches out there. And I know we went a little long today, but I'm okay with that because whenever we have great stories happening, that's when I'm just here and listening and just becoming a fan all over again and just trying to like put myself into their story and stuff.
I was like, New Jersey 80s track, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, everything as you get older, you realize like, did life happen before the 80s? The 80s were freaking awesome. Like the 80s were possibly the best generation. Really possible. Like I was born late 80s. I was an 88 kid. Man, I wish I was like 78 or 81.
I was 78.
Oh man, because the 80s are possibly the greatest generation of all time. But
they were fun.
I digress there. But everyone, we appreciate you all watching. We appreciate everyone.